Hello, beautiful people. My name's Michael, and my name means who is like God. I've had several women over the years that I've had encounters with and friendships with, and their meanings of their names should be on the front of the screen that you're looking at. I'm not giving out their names per se, but here we are. So the first group I'm going to be focusing on is to bind the sheep and to make weak. And all three of these ladies, if you put their names together, the bind sheep is made weak. And I felt like that was kind of like interesting to say, is like the Lord was basically preparing me to be a sacrifice, it felt like. Now, dealing with the close or to bind and the sheep were both sisters, and the Lord even gave me a dream about both of them before I even met them. And the Lord even talked about how my wife is coming. At that time, I was thinking it was the sheep. But God was actually saying it's a David-Jonathan type friendship. And so he was actually referring the wife as the to bind person or the close friend. So if you're familiar with David and Jonathan, their soul was knitted together like one. And that's basically, it is like a marriage in a sense. So that's why I think God was saying it's like your wife is coming, was actually a close friend, and I never got anything about marrying any one of them, though I thought it might have been the sheep at first. When I heard my wife is coming, I was like, whoa, okay. But as I got more clarity from the Lord, that's the understanding that I was able to get. Now, hopefully you're familiar with the story of Samson and Delilah. What happened with Samson? First, he had a wife, didn't he? Or he tried to get a wife. It kind of failed. But then he eventually in the story, you see that Delilah comes into the picture. Well, the name of to make weak is actually not, her name wasn't Delilah itself, but a derivative or an offshoot of Delilah. And even at one point, how do I put it this way? She was saying, my hair was getting long. I was thinking about cutting my hair. She was talking about, oh, you should cut your hair. I was like, yeah, kind of thinking about that anyways. And then I get my hair cut, and then she's bragging to her boss about how she got me to cut my hair. Okay, yeah. Even during that time, because she was actually my boss, all right? She was one of my bosses. During that time, I was just like spiritually weak at that point also. And so I had to have my friends pray for me, because I was basically spiritually weak. I was just like so emotionally and spiritually drained. And when they prayed for me, one of the ladies just saw like this light that was on my face after they had prayed for me, like that glow. Now, like, that was kind of cool. And so I kind of felt like the Lord was kind of giving me some strength back at that point. Now, getting into the pure, I had this one lady on YouTube that I was watching, the Lord, and gave me a dream about watching her. And I went to one of her conferences and her name also means pure, where she prophesied over me about how she was thanking God for raising up a pure prophet. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't fully get it because there was like other stuff I was still trying to digest and other stuff she was prophesying over me and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, cool.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for a prophet, Jesus. Thank you, God, that you're rising up a pure prophet to be sent us.
And also, this is during the time of this is right before leading into the whole COVID stuff going on in the lockdown. And during the time of the lockdowns and stuff of that nature, I actually had a friend that I became friends with, and her name also means pure too. So like, okay, pure, pure, pure. There we go. And so the Lord just got to do it. So the Lord had then instructed me to do a 40-day fast of no video games. I couldn't play Sudoku on my phone. I couldn't play any action platformer jumping games or survival games or anything like that. And then I looked, and it's like the fast actually ended as the Feast of Tabernacles started. So I literally was carrying a sacrifice, or I was a sacrifice if you want to put it that way, into the season of Tabernacles. At that time, he was also I would go into the Feast of Tabernacles and season and do that with a tent. So I make a tent inside of a tent. I'm like, cool. And the Lord was talking to me about the Holy of Holies and how my tent is like a tabernacle in the wilderness during the times of Moses. And I just kept on getting this and getting this. And I eventually asked the Lord, it's like, Lord, there should be a third tent where the Holy of Holies are. And he basically came back to me as like, you are the tabernacle. Like, I'm the third tent. Oh, that means the Holy of Holies is inside of me. And I'm like, okay, I'm not dead. But then, if you fast forward, a year and a half later, God gives me a dream about how I actually died at that point. I was put in a stasis field, and I was about to be, resuscitated. So, I was put in a stasis field so my body wouldn't decay, an EMC field or something of that nature. And it just shows me before I'm resuscitated, that year and a half, I'm basically in the bathroom just crying and getting cleaned up. And I wanted to get cleaned up before I was resuscitated. So now enters in, before I even had that dream, the other group. This close friend, even though it was a pain, there was some pain in that friendship, it wasn't like she was purposely causing it. I had a lot of insecurities dealing with the opposite sex. And I knew this, so that's why I would try to be friends with the opposite sex to try to get over this. Well, in dealing with her, she helped me overcome a lot of my insecurities in that sense. So then we end up into the Pleasant one, and the Lord even asked me to marry her, but it actually failed. And he even kind of let me know in a sense that this isn't going to actually work out, but I'm having you go through a process here. And if you want more information on that, and he even gave me the verse where it's like, if she says no, you're released. I'm like, okay, cool. And I do have a video on that pertaining to the Pleasant one and how God asked me to marry her, but it failed. So I do have a video on that. And also, then we come to the one to open. And it's interesting because I actually had a dream of all three of these ladies, the Pleasant one and the weapon, were above. And then the to open lady was on the bottom. But she had on this hoodie. So I thought she was being hidden. You're not revealing to who she is? And I was kind of getting the sense of this whole cycle repeating itself again. And I didn't really get it when I had first met her. But I remember the Lord just like, I started walking away from her, and the Lord just says, ask her about her testimony. And I just start asking about her testimony, how she came to Christ. And we just kind of struck up a bit of a friendship starting from that point on. And yeah, that was kind of an interesting aspect. The one thing is, I felt like she gave me a lot of strength. And so it was kind of like you have the close friend that to bind or to tie up. Then you have the close friend that has the weapon. Now you think about it this way, the weapon can break those binds. And in that process, it was healing me. So all those scars and whatever you want to call it, or emotional trauma, was being healed by dealing with the other lady. And so like I was being set free in a lot of ways. And then when you get with the sheep, I was kind of made weak like a sheep. I was docile. I couldn't really do anything. I was kind of helpless like a sheep. And then if you think about it, I'm thinking about it, and it's like, well, then I got the other person, that I liked, with the Pleasent one, and it kind of almost gave me that strength to become more like a lion and bolder, And then I'm thinking like with the beauty to make weak, and then the other beauty to open is like the complete contrast. Whereas it was kind of like that person was making me weak, the other one was making me strong. So it was just kind of like that whole contrast of just what God was doing in my life. Like, you think about it, I couldn't have planned something of this magnitude for God to do in my life. So it's like literally the complete opposite. And I'm not saying there wasn't complications and fights and whatever. But God has a way of orchestrating things that is beyond our understanding of things. And when I look back and I can see the meanings behind their names and realize just the fullness of what God was doing, you kind of have to take a step back and like, wow. Now I just have to ask you, what is the Lord doing in your life? Alright. And if you want, there's some links down below you might find interesting. Alright. Bye for now.